Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast. This is Arun Gala. My podcast is called Grabbing Coffee with Arun, where I talk to everyday people that are doing interesting things. And today, my guest is Maria Krystic. Maria she's had a guide dog for a while, and the cool thing about it is she's gainfully employed. And Maria, just to start off with, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks so much, Adam. Thanks for having me.
To start off with, Maria, tell me a little bit about your dog's name and um, how long have you had it and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, my current guide dog, she is my second, but her name is Osaka, and she is a female chocolate lab. She's about 63 pounds, and I have had her for just about 3.5 years now. And before Osaka, I had Lacey, and I worked with Lacey from 2011 to 2022 when I got Osaka. And both of the have not only been females, little girls, a similar weight, but they have both been chocolate labs, which has been very
Wow.
cool. Yes, because chocolate labs are the least common of the lab colors. And I actually got to have both of them together for almost 2.5 years after Lacey retired. And so that was a blessing. So, yes, I've been blessed to share my life with these two beautiful girls. It's very smart and sweet and loyal and playful. And it's definitely been one of the best decisions that I've taken for myself in my own journey.
So, Maria, how did you decide? I use a cane, right, to get around. And how does one, let's say, for example, like a lot of the sighted people, they're quick to say, hey, get a guide dog, right? But
Yes.
you have to take care of the dog, you have to feed it, you have to do all these things. And I mean, I'm okay with my cane right now, but how did you make that decision to go to a guide dog?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's of course a matter of personal preference. One is not better than the other. They're very different, and I definitely had my share of sighted people telling me I had to get I had to get a guide dog as well when I was primarily a cane traveler. So I definitely understand. For me, the cane is more of this tactile way of traveling, as I'm sure you can appreciate. You hit every obstacle, every garbage can, every tree, every mailbox, what have you, and you're just getting a lot of this environmental information. Whereas with a guide dog, it is much more of the bigger picture type of travel because you're going around obstacles. The dog is guiding you around obstacles, keeping that straight line of travel, finding your curbs, your changes in elevation, taking you across the street in a straight way when you've deemed it to be safe, right? It's you can really focus on those big picture. We're gonna go right here, and so it's a little less tactile and more you're using some of your other senses to know where you are. And honestly, I never really thought I was going to get a guide dog. I'd never had a dog growing up. My teacher of the visually impaired, I'm totally blind since birth, so I had a teacher of the visually impaired in school, and she was low vision and had a guide dog. So I'd had some of that exposure through seeing them work, but I really never really thought I was going to get one. And then in college, there were a couple of students with guide dogs on campus, and I really got to hang out with them, for
Wow.
lack of a better word. Not only witnessing the work, and I think a big moment for me came where there was just a hailstorm at one point, and we had to go back to the dorm, and her
Hmm.
dog, just from having done the route so many times, of course we need to know where we're going, it's teamwork,
Right.
but once they've learned, they kind of know, and she was wanting to be out of that hail, and she knew she could see the dorm, and she was going there, and I just grabbed on and off we went, and I was like, whoa, like this is so much faster. This dog was just is so smart. And then I just got to, play with them, and like spend when they weren't working, I got to spend time with dogs, and
Hmm.
they were just so much fun. And that was literally my turning point. Like, I want one of these dogs. And literally a week after I graduated from undergrad, I was in training to get Lacey.
So where did you get your dog again?
Yes, both of my dogs are from Leader Dog in Michigan.
Oh, they're in Michigan. And how long did you
Yes.
how long did you how long was the training to get one?
Yeah, so that actually it varies certainly a bit by schools to some extent, and it was actually very interesting the evolution as I've worked with both of them. When I got Lacey, it was a 4-week training, and when I
Hmm.
got Osaka, it was a 3-week training, and I was a little uncertain of that time shortening, but then as I considered it with the four, not only did we cover everything, but then I was thinking to myself, I think with this 4-week training, we ended up kind of repeating things a little bit just to reinforce and get some extra practice. So I didn't feel like the 1 week less of time was any less like that I missed out on anything. And you go, the lots of schools do have different types of options. Some are home training, some can do a combination of going to the campus and then coming home with you. Some are strictly on campus, and Leader Dog has a variety of options, but I really liked this model, and I'm blessed to have been able to take the time off of work and such to go. It's like it's like a full immersion. When you go there, you don't have to worry
Right.
about the cooking and the cleaning, and you can get to meet other people and learn about their journeys, and have that camaraderie as you're going through, and really just get exposure to a bunch of different types
Yeah,
of
believe it or not,
environments.
Maria, I went back and forth with that, because my family is like, my parents are like, oh, you should get one because I bought a house a couple of years ago, only 2 blocks from my parents' house, and I have to use this paratransit metro lift to kind of go back and forth. And
Yeah.
my mom is like, why don't you get a dog? It'll be good for you. It'll take care of you. I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not sure. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's a teamwork. It's a when they sighted people will say well-meaning, the dog will take care of you, but it's a partnership, right? You have to take care of your dog as well. You have to take them out for walks and play with them, and take them out and brush them, and take them to the vet, and get their food. And it's a partnership. It's not like you can just go, okay, puppy, we're going to the store, and they know
right.
where you're going. You need to be able to know where you are going based on what's under your feet, or based on how the sound changes from your hearing, or whatever it ends up being, your other senses, right? You have to be able to cue them. Okay, we're going to start making a right now, and then a left, and right. So it's absolutely teamwork. And yes, I mean, I can say as a female, and I am living alone and such, definitely for sure from a safety perspective, absolutely having a dog does give me that reassurance, in terms of not
So,
that they're trained to do anything like that, but I'd like to think that, and hopefully it'll never happen, but if we got into some kind of situation, that she would do something. But it is definitely teamwork and a partnership.
So tell me about, okay, so you said you're gainfully employed and I'm sure you take them to work and all that, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. So
How do
I
you
have
get to
been,
work, or do you take a
yes,
train or subway or?
I take the bus,
Hmm.
and I'm very blessed in where I was able to live. I actually moved here to take this job, and I'm in upstate New York, and so I was in looking for apartments, trying to find places that were walkable, and it
Hmm.
really just worked out so nicely. Not only is this a walkable area, but the actual bus stop that for the bus route that I do take to work is pretty close. And so, yes, I work for a public authority in the state of New York, and I am blessed to be able to work in my field. I have a JD, which is a law degree with a focus in finance, and also an MBA
Oh
with a
my God,
finance
Maria, you're
focus.
smart.
So I've I've definitely had a lot of support along the way, and it's been a blessing to. I'm able to. So in my job, I work with supporting compliance for. So we issue bonds that are tax exempt, and they're used for construction. So our clients are like universities and hospitals and libraries, and because the bonds are exempt from tax, there are rules
Right.
on what the kinds of costs the bonds can be spent on, and how quickly they have to be spent, and if you invest them, how much you can make if you invest that money. While construction takes forever, as we know, and so I am supporting that compliance. So it was such a blessing. One of my professors on the law school side actually suggested this to me. He had been on the board at the time, and being able to use both of those skill sets in compliance, and also in some small way contribute to community development in my area and in the state. So
So like
it's been 8 years.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was
Um,
gonna say it's been 8 years now, as of this recording, so it's worked
wow,
out.
that's cool. So while you're working, what, the dog is just kind of laying under your desk, or?
Oh yeah, yes. So of course the route into work, right? The walking and the bus stop, and
Mm-hmm.
there are a nice couple of 4-lane street crossings.
Mm-hmm.
She's working hard. And then
Right.
we come to work, and yes, she has a bed, and she even
Oh
has
my God.
she has a fancier bed now because I had brought a travel bed,
Man,
right? They're
she gets
easier
better
to
treatment than
to
I
come in.
do.
one of, one of one of my coworkers actually got her. She has a dog as well, a lab, and she really is like, I love Osaka, and she got her the same bed that her lab has at home. So she's
Right.
got a fancier bed now, and so yes, she's got her bed. She's got a nylabone. She hangs out. She sleeps. She's got a water bowl. She's pretty comfortable, and I take her out of harness, so she's just taking it easy. And then yeah, if we need to go to a different location in the building or what have you, we'll go around together and such. But yes, she's guide dogs. They definitely have to, and every dog gets matched with their person based on
Yeah.
not only size and stamina, but lifestyle and such. And
Right.
so I have had to have these dogs that are a bit more environmentally, sound, if you will,
Yeah.
comfortable with a more urban environment, but then can also kind of turn it off and just relax a bit, as she's doing right now under the table as we're recording. um,
Let me ask you this, Maria. Like, a lot of these people, I notice that blind people, they're on a fixed income, right? So
yes.
what do you think as far as like, the vet bills and food bills, and that all that costs money, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
worked, I mean, you worked, I worked, and all that, so that it's probably not a big cost for us, but people that are on fixed income, how would you, what do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely. Yes. And we've definitely, as you said, both of us have been blessed to have had the steady employment and such. Yeah, it is a real concern. I know Leader Dog, when someone applies for a dog, they do ask, are you able to cover the costs? There are some schools that are able, through some donation programs that they've established, to provide some either reimbursement completely for the working life or even in the retirement of the dog, or to provide a stipend. A lot of schools, I know, for example, Leader Dog has an emergency fund if there's some
Mhm.
kind of extraordinary expense that comes up, that would for example, if it's like a surgery or something and it would result in the dog being able to return to work, that's handled on a case by case basis. There are, Lions clubs. There are definitely some
Right.
grants and resources in local areas. I would definitely encourage anyone who's thinking about it to do some searches for veterinary assistance in their area, and perhaps even type in like veterinary assistance for service animals or for guide dogs. So yes, there are resources, but I can absolutely appreciate that, and I do acknowledge that yes, there is a cost involved.
Yeah, and what about like, let's say for you're taking him to work, right? I mean, he'll show you where the elevator is, and he'll show you where the trash can is, and all that, right?
Yeah, so
Kind
it's
of.
a combination. Yeah, so it's a combination of, there are certain objects that they do have generalized training to when they're able to see them, like finding the door or
Hmm.
finding a curb, for example. And then other items, it's called targeting. Other items we teach them to find more
Hmm.
specific. So yes, like I can tell her if she can see the door, right? I can tell her find the door, and it's even more helpful if I happen to know, okay, well, I'm on the right side of the street and the door's to the right, so we're saying right, find the door. But and I can, finding elevators and such. But some of these more, for example, my cubicle at work, right? Some of these more
Right.
specific. If when I went to visit, when I went for a retreat program, and it was kind of like a dorm style in my room, or like a blindness convention, and my room was one specific room down a hallway, right? We are shown how to train them, it's called patterning, how to pattern them to
Mhm.
learning that exact location. So like now, for example, she will just because we've done it so many times. Of course,
Right.
I do always support her and reinforce,
Hmm.
to make sure I know where I'm going. They're dogs. They're really smart and
Right.
they work. But of course, sometimes she's a lab and something on the ground will just be irresistible, and it's like, nope, we're gonna go straight. But yeah, it's a combination of just some of those generalized: find the chair, find the door, find the stairs, and then some of that more specific targeting that we teach them. So like now, without if I were not to say to her, we're walking down the hallway to my cube, and if I didn't say right and have the hand signal to go right, she would at this point, just because we've done it so much and she knows it's my cube, and she knows that's her bed.
Yeah. So Maria, how long do they retire them after a certain number of years, or
It's really so individual.
oh, it is. Oh,
I
okay.
have heard some schools that give, after so many years you're going to retire. But thankfully my school leader dog is very much open to considering it on a case by case basis. The average uh that people get told, when applying and thinking about a guide dog, is that they work for an average of 8 to 10 years. And so then it really just, some I've heard retire earlier because of, behavioral issues, and some later, but that really is an average 8 to 10. I was
Hmm.
very blessed that my Lacey, my first guide, I mean, we really did hit that 10-year mark. And so it really just depends on the dog, their ability to work from a medical perspective, and just
Hmm.
their enthusiasm. There's sometimes they just start to either slow down, or they get a bit, stressed, or they just
Tired,
get
or
like
yeah.
very distracted, right? Like they start to show you, like, I don't want to do this anymore, and then, you owe it to the pup to give them that retirement. And I was blessed that with my apartment, that and this was something that I had planned for when I moved here. I knew I wanted to be able to keep my dogs after they retired. And so it's just a blessing that my apartment is pet friendly. And so when she hung up her harness,
Yeah.
she was a pet.
Do you remember they stopped doing German Shepherds, I guess, right?
Uh, so leader dog, actually, many schools have. There are a couple of schools that still do breed German Shepherds, and there's
Uh-huh.
actually one school called Fidelco that exclusively breeds German Shepherds. A couple of others do breed them to some extent, although they're a smaller percentage as compared to lab and Goldens and lab Golden crosses. But yes, leader dog, where my both of my ladies have come from, they did stop breeding German Shepherds. I want to say it was either a year or two back. The time flies, and really that's only because they found a smaller success rate with them, a lower success rate as compared to with labs and Goldens. And I think too some of it is that some people were there was some fear around having them and such. But yeah, I know someone who is a veteran, and she, coming from that military background and such, like, she really appreciates having a German Shepherd. So it's definitely good to have options. But yes, absolutely, there are definitely much fewer Shepherds. The vast majority, or I would say labs, followed maybe like roughly 75% ish, and then you've got maybe 10-15% or so Goldens, and then maybe 10% crosses, and then 5% other breeds. You'll occasionally see leader dog does not, but some other schools will breed like occasional standard poodles, or I've seen like Doberman pinchers, or so just
Mm.
some of these kind of outliers. But the vast majority of guide dogs are going to be your labs,
So
just because.
what was the most difficult thing you did with the dog? Did you take him like overseas anywhere, or?
Yes, yes, I have actually traveled several times. I have a lot of family. Originally, I'm from Bosnia, but have a lot of family now in Croatia, and so I have gone 3 times now to
Mhm.
Croatia with dogs. I've also gone on a cruise,
By
and I've
yourself?
been.
Yeah.
My parents went as well on this
Right.
cruise, but I did go. I took that was Lacey at the time, and I've been to several countries. So, yes, that definitely it took a lot of planning, because there's a lot of paperwork that has to be completed,
Hmm.
international health certificates and registering, filling out forms with airlines, and these have to be done in certain time frames. And but it is a bit involved, but it's very much a reading of the regulations, which are very nicely laid out on U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I've just found it really, really worth it. It's everyone has to look at their individual circumstances and whether what they would be doing would be suitable to traveling with a guide dog, right? Are you going to be traveling where there are some nice sidewalks and you're sightseeing, versus you're traveling somewhere that has a lot of stray dogs and doesn't really have so much of infrastructure to support the
Hmm.
dog's training, and is incredibly hot, right? So that's a determination that everyone has to make on their own. But if the circumstance is feasible, it's absolutely doable. My pups, they've flown in the airplane cabin with me at my feet, and it's one of those, just giving them less food and water the day of, and I haven't had any kind of accident happen, and it's just a lot of fun getting to have them be there with that experience. I've enjoyed just watching them learn new routes,
Hmm.
and some new environmental, like the curbs are a little different there in Croatia, and it can definitely be a challenge. There is even in there was a bit less of awareness of guide dogs. For
Hmm.
example, I
Like I was, yeah,
wouldn't
I was
really.
gonna, like I was gonna ask you, how was it when you actually got there? Because
Right,
do people
right.
look at you, or people look at you kind of funny, or what was your experience
Definitely,
like?
yeah, definitely a lot of staring, but not in a malicious way, just very
Hmm.
curious is what I
Hmm.
was told.
Right.
And people did not recognize, on the street, as I mentioned, based on the harness. Like, they wouldn't recognize. I'd go into a store and some people would say you can't bring a dog into the store.
Hmm.
But if I'd say this is a guide dog, because there is a guide dog school there in Croatia, I do think that helps some of the advocacy groundwork that they laid. And
Hmm.
so when I said she's a guide dog, there would be a lot of, oh, okay, I'm sorry. There would be understanding as to what a guide dog was. I did have one instance where a hotel didn't want to take us, and I had to, go to a couple of different hotels and such. And I don't have to deal with that so much nowadays because staying with family and such now. But yeah, just generally in terms of restaurants and stores and such, it definitely was better than I was anticipating for a country. Croatia's just it's been in the European Union for the past like 10 years, or dozen, yeah, 10 dozen or so years now.
Hmm.
And so just really it's been better than I expected. And I went in 2016 and 2021 and now in 2025, and it has definitely gotten better. And then with the cruise ships, that's also interesting, when you go to different ports. And then we had gone to a uh
Well,
a couple of Canadian
you took them on
ports.
a cruise too, huh?
Yes, so
Wow.
yes, and so that was being in a Canadian port, right? That was, pretty similar. I wasn't concerned. But yeah, that's its own, having to educate passengers and crew, like, no, please don't kick these food scraps to my dog when she's under the
Right.
table. And it's just these little things for the dogs to relieve themselves on the ship. They set up, some wooden box with pellets, and they have to get
Right.
used to it and all of this. So just again, labs being very
Hmm.
adaptable. They're just very apt to doing this work. But yeah, all of it does take some planning, and yeah, it's like having a small child with you in some in certain ways, right? You have to pack for them and such. But for me, it's just such a joy walking with this being, this
Right.
beautiful animal
That's
that wants to work with me. And just when i
right.
when i when I know that she's thinking, that she's thinking how to get around the obstacle, or that she's trying to figure out, she knows we usually go left, but now I'm telling her to go right, and she's kind of looking at me like, are you sure? We usually go left. So their initiative, they love this work. You cannot force them to do this work. And so for me, there's just a magic and a wonder of walking, having a travel companion with a fuzzy face and a wet nose and a wagging tail.
So, Maria, the biggest thing that kind of makes me a little nervous is like Houston streets are just so busy. I'm just wondering, like when you go to work, do you cross any major streets or
I do have a couple of four-lane
right,
crossings when I
right.
go to work. Yes. And the guide dogs are definitely very, I think, suitable for that. If you have a good match with a dog that has that environmental soundness and is okay in that
Hmm.
environment, they are really good at, targeting that other curb. Of course, it's our job to know based on traffic flow when it's safe to cross the street. And there is intelligent disobedience where a lot of the misconception comes of, do the dogs know when to cross the street? No, no,
Right.
no. It's your job to know when to cross the street, and the dog is supposed to be a safety net. If you every once in a while say, once in a great while, if you say forward and then there's, some kind of car in front of you or something, they're supposed to stop. But that's not supposed to be the everyday occurrence. But so but yeah, they definitely can adapt to that. And that's something when you apply for a guide dog, they ask the different schools, they ask lots of questions about your living environment, and often they'll either have you send a video showing a route that you're traveling with your cane, or they will have a representative come out to you so that they can see you doing that in person. Because it's important to say that you do need orientation and mobility skills before you apply for a guide dog, not only because you're using some of those same orientation type skills to know,
Hmm.
where's the sun in relation to you? Oh, the building has opened up and you hear some cars. You must be at an intersection, right? Whatever the
Right.
hill, the texture is declining under your feet. That's what this means, But also there are times when if your guide dog is sick, or if there are some places that might not be so appropriate, like if you go to the zoo and
Hmm.
wild animals might not appreciate a dog, or like if you're going somewhere super loud, like a rock concert or something, so there,
Right.
and I even carry a cane in my backpack at work, just if I ever were to be in some kind of situation that is unfamiliar and I
Right.
needed to find out some more information. And in addition to like visual assistance apps on my phone and such, I can have the cane there if I need more information. So they're definitely very valid. But yes, I would definitely say, for me, yes, having a guide dog is a reassurance for me with those especially some of those larger and busier street crossings that I know I tell her to find the curb, and she's gonna take me to it.
Believe it or not, Maria, this was very informative, and it's cool to see like people that are visually impaired and blind that you don't let that stop you from having a career and having living a life. And definitely, I can tell that having a guide dog opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah, yeah, if it's the right decision for someone, it really can. It's a social icebreaker for sure, and guide dog handlers have to be prepared to have those interactions with the public. People are curious and people say, "Oh, it's a pretty dog" and such. So, but yes, it can absolutely open doors. And I like the term in terms of from a personal empowerment perspective, your point on blindness and not letting it stop you. From a personal empowerment standpoint, I like this term of being differently abled, that we are
Right.
able to do things just in a different way.
That's kind of cool that you took it overseas and all that because I'm Indian and I thought about like what would it be like to take a dog to India, because I
You
don't have
know,
Indian laws and all that. So,
it's interesting you actually mentioned that, because I had it didn't end up happening because of COVID, but I was actually supposed to be visiting India in 2020, and I
mm,
definitely took the decision, really considering it, and I had spoken with someone who had done it and such many many years back in like early 90s, and just took the decision, given some of those variables about the stray dogs and infrastructure and such, that it probably would not be the best idea
right,
to take her. And I'm thinking, street crossings and traffic, being more followed like a guideline instead of a rule, and all of this, that
right.
it just wouldn't be so conducive. As much as I would love to have Osaka with me when I hopefully go to visit India soon,
That
I
is such
think
a cool
probably
name, I
it wouldn't.
think. I love your
Yeah,
dog's name. It's such a, I bet he's cute as can be. Well, that's
she's
a
a
shoot.
world traveling doggy.
Oh, talking about, yeah. Thanks again, Maria. If you guys want to reach me,
Thank
my
you.
email is grabbingcoffeewitharun at gmail.com. Maria, thank you very much for your time. Very informative, and I'll have you back again soon.
Sounds great. This has
Thank
been
you, Maria.
fun.
Thank you for
Thanks,
your time.
Donovan.
Okay,
Thank
take care.
you.
Bye bye.
You too.
Bye
Bye.
bye.